What is up, everybody? I am Chris, and welcome to the third episode of my basic guide to League of Legends. So today we're going to be learning about the jungler role in accordance with today's current metagame. Now, jungler is a role that's very near and dear to my heart because it was the first role that I really started playing while leveling up my account on the North American server. And I'm not sure why I specify the North American server because it's the only account I have. But anyways, I hope to go over in this episode basic jungler attributes, what makes a good jungler, as well as their role in the game. So, there's a player by the name of Stonewall008, and he has a tier list of junglers on the Reign of Gaming website over at reignofgaming.net. And his tier list basically focuses on 6 attributes for a jungler. There's speed, which is the rate at which a jungler can clear his own jungle. Resilience, meaning how he's able to survive in his own jungle. Path/build, which is how he transitions in his item build throughout the game. Sustainability, which is how long he can afford to stay in his jungle without having to go back. Ganking, which is his potential to get kills on the side lanes, and invasion, which is their capability to go into the enemy jungle and clear their camps and rob them of that golden experience. So here at 140, you'll see that Lux does some damage to wolves, and that is where I start my jungling route. Now there are a couple of routes that you can go when jungling, and it really all depends on your champion and how you want to play out the game. So one of the more common ones is Wolves to Blue, which just spawned. Lux did the leash that I mentioned in the AP carry video. And I take the early blue buff in order to better sustain myself in the jungle, because the mana regeneration means that I'm allowed to use my stances often and clear the jungle camps that much faster. You'll notice I started with boots and 3 health potions. This is one of a couple common starting item builds when playing a jungler. So what the boots allow me to do is be faster, obviously, and that helps my gank potential immensely. The potions are there to, once again, help me sustain myself in the jungle. So after killing the Wraith camp, I head towards red. Now normally, the Wraiths, or Wolves Blue, Wraiths Red route is for someone who wants to get kills early, because it's a quick level 3, and they have both of the jungle buffs, which help, and the blue buff helps them with the cooldown use, and red buff means that I can slow whoever I want to get on. So here I try for a gank in mid, and the lane's pushed up, so I can't really flank LeBlanc, because if I go out into the lane she'll see me, and if I go in behind her, I'm basically at her turret. So I decide instead to go to bot lane, because it's getting a bit more pushed up, and luckily bot lane decides to engage on Teemo, meaning that they're exposed because they've used their abilities. So I burn Flash and I stun Ezreal, and then I stun Lulu once I realize I'm not going to be able to catch up to Ezreal. So by moving in between my auto attacks, I'm able to catch up to Lulu and get a kill. So in addition to the aforementioned Wolves, Blue, Wraiths, Red route, there's also Wolves, Blue, Wraiths, and then back to Wolves, and then Red buff. This route gets you to level 4 quicker, and you'll have double buff, as I did with my current route. But anyways, as I was saying before, there are a couple standard starting item builds. So there's Boots plus 3, which, as I said, helps with the ganks and sustainability. Cloth plus 5 health potions, which is a cloth armor and 5 health potions, which means that I am a bit tankier in the jungle, but I don't really have that movement speed to help with my ganks. Instead, that option is for just, you want to farm up your lane until you need to go back, and by then you should have enough money for boots and maybe some wards or something. There I tried for a gank onto LeBlanc once I saw that Lux was engaging, but Lux was able to solo her and almost died in the process, but she got away. So now I'm just kind of sitting in mid lane, gathering XP, because the XP that you get from jungle camps is much less than it is in solo lanes. So if you're able to sort of hold the lane while your teammate goes back to buy items, that will just get you ahead in XP and some gold, if the enemy jungler is unable to do so.
We will not pity the defenseless.
So, for creep camps, there's the wolf camp, blue camp, wraith camp, red camp, and golems. Each of these is on their own separate respawn timer, which activates every time that they die. So, I try for another gank and fail. So wolves respawns every 1 minute, wraiths every 50 minutes, or every 1 minute, every 50 seconds on wraiths, and then every minute on golems. Now you'll notice that I never actually go to golems in this game, and this is because golem buff, or golem camp rather, is far out of the way of, I guess, the center of the map. And being around the center of the map means that, you know, you can get to the side lanes quicker, and you're also in mid lane quicker. Because if I were to go from golem camp to top, that is much more slow, or much slower than going from, say, wolves to bot lane. Now here you'll see me go into the enemy jungle. And I take this opportunity to steal the enemy wraith because I know that Shen had just died in top lane. Now, this is called counter jungling, going into the enemy jungle and just taking resources. And I left some of the camp up because the smaller monsters in each of these camps gives far less golden XP than the big one. So for wolf camp, the big one is the brown one. For wraith camp, the big one is the blue one, and then the golem camp, the big one is the big one. So now we are approaching about 7:20 in this game. So blue buff just respawned because blue buff respawns every 5 minutes after you kill it. So I throw a ping down to let Lux know I'm gonna be damaging this, so you can come kill it and get the buff for yourself. So she responds to the ping by coming over here and killing it.
Our instincts are razor sharp.
So one thing that is common to a lot of junglers is that they're going to be using the Smite Summoner spell. The other Summoner spell will usually be either Exhaust or Flash or Ghost. So the Smite is to control when certain things die. So with blue buff, you'll notice at the start of the game, I clicked on the blue golem to see how much health it had. At level 1, Smite does 445 damage, and then it'll do an additional 25 damage every level. So when the blue buff is below 445 health, I can use Smite to just finish it off and make sure that I'm the one who gets the kill on it. This principle applies to Baron, Dragon, and Red buff, and pretty much anything else that you can use Smite on. So the other summoner spell I'm using is Flash. Now this helps me to close the distance between me and the target that I'm ganking, in addition to my Bear stance, which increases my movement speed. Now some junglers will opt to use Exhaust, which means that when they gank, they're pretty much stuck to you if they have red buff and some other form of CC, meaning that you're not really going to be able to get away unless you pop Flash and outrun their gap closers. Another summoner that you might see is Ghost, which basically has the same principle as Flash. Normally you don't really see it on a whole lot of champions unless they have excellent gap closers or some sort of crowd control reduction. So people like Mundo and Olaf, you'll see run Ghost over Flash or Exhaust sometimes.
Do not deny your instincts, summoner.
Oh yeah, I thought that's pretty awesome. Nunu just absolutely demolishing Shen.
Has been slain.
That is our path.
So here Aurelia's pretty low. She's at about 33% HP, maybe a quarter. And I think it's a good idea to turret dive because I'm at full HP, Nunu's almost at full HP, and I'm pretty tanky with my Heart of Gold and Philosopher's Stone. So he walks in, uses a Ice Blast, and flashes away. I get stunned underneath the turret, but it's okay because I'm tanky with my Bear Stance to let me run away faster, and my Eternal Shield to just
We will
absorb some
not
damage.
pity the defenseless.
And once again, since I know Shen just died, I go towards the enemy Wraith camp, and this time, I clear the entire camp.
Our instincts
And I do it for the
are
following
razor
reason.
sharp.
I am pretty ahead of Shen, meaning that he cannot really contest me taking his camps too well without any
That
assistance from his teammates. So now that I have an idea of when his Wraith will come back up, I now have an additional camp to start farming from, in addition to my Wolves and Wraiths, which I take normally
do
anyways.
not deny your instincts, summoner.
And when you counter jungle your enemy, it basically forces them to gank, because they're missing a camp in their jungle, they probably don't want to take golems, so they just farm wolves, and that's not going to give them enough XP or gold to do anything in the game. So they start to gank, and if their gank fails, then they're just still way behind.
Our instincts are razor sharp.
Also, if your team has the map adequately worded, when they go to gank, you know where the enemy jungler is. And once you know where the enemy jungler is, you can do
Rage is beyond
aggressive plays in other lanes. So here I checked the enemy red buff, but I probably should have figured that it was down since it's about 12 minutes into the game right now. And here Shen spotted me recalling, so I just kind of turn on him. And you'll notice that I'm not really taking a whole lot of damage, and Shen is just getting really, really low. So low that I probably could have turret dove him here, but that would have been pretty risky of me to do. Especially since I don't know where LeBlanc is.
that is our path.
So I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but another common jungle route
Without hesitation.
is to go from Wraiths to Red, and then either gank a lane or get golems. Now, if you choose to gank after red buff, you should really gank dependent on which side of the map you're on. So if you're on purple side, after red buff, it's probably wise to gank top lane. Or mid, but it's most likely going to be top lane. If you're on blue side, then you want to gank either mid or bottom.
Deny your
And since bottom is a 2v2 and you're going to be level 2 at the same time as they are, that 3v2 with your red buff, it may work sometimes, but the support usually has the gank path warded.
beyond.
So, in terms of like which jungler should go which route, any jungler with a good level 3 gank potential, so someone like Udyr who will have Phoenix, Turtle Stance, and Bear Stance, you can go for that early double buff gank route, or if you're someone like Nautilus, you can do that as well. If you're someone who would rather just sort of farm your jungle until you get those abilities to allow you to kill a lane easier, then I'd recommend going Wolves to Blue to Wraiths back to Wolves, and then red buff, and then you can do Wraiths and Wolves again after that. The Wraiths to red buff route is really for junglers who have a strong level 2,
We will
or
not
don't
be
really need
defenseless.
the mana regen from blue buff. Now, blue buff also regens energy, which a lot of people don't really know, but most energy pools aren't really that large, so it's not that noticeable.
That is our path. Weapons are for the weak.
So one thing you'll notice me doing is buying wards with my extra gold. I try to leave base with at least 2 wards in my inventory, just so I could place wards where my team does not already have vision. This helps because a lot of times in normal games or even solo queue, people for some reason refuse to buy wards despite the fact that it really helps your team. And you just want to help your team, so you buy those wards instead, because you can't trust people sometimes. Also, as a jungler, especially as Udyr, who has that ability to invade, you can place wards within the enemy jungle to help you counter jungle better, or see which side of the jungle your enemy is on, as opposed to having them walk into your ward in the river in order for you to know where they are. Now, as far as ganking is concerned, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I didn't really plan out my dialogue for this tutorial too well. But in terms of ganking, you're going to be ganking from one of 2 ways in as far as any lane is concerned. You're either going from the river into the lane, or wrapping around behind the enemy. I guess there's the third way, which is going in through your lane where your opponent does not have vision. So when you gank from river, you're basically going for a flank. It's a really useful way to gank if the enemy lane is pushed, but this route is usually warded. If you want to go behind the enemy team, it's a bit trickier because some routes mean that you're going to end up at or behind the enemy turret, and it's generally a bit more dangerous because unless the enemy team is at their turret and your minions are as well, you're going to be taking a couple turret shots, and damage on you is generally what you don't want to get as a jungler, because you're going to be the one initiating most of the time and applying that pressure. So to gank from behind the enemy, if you're purple side, you go through the bottom tribush. If you know that they don't have dragon warded, actually, I guess I should word that better. You get into the enemy tribush, which hopefully is not warded, and it likely isn't, because if you're on purple side, bottom lane's probably warding blue or dragon, and it means that you can't really go down the river to gank them because they will see you. If you exit through the blue jungle entrance, then you're going to get spotted right away, and if you come in from that mid lane jungle entrance, you're going to get spotted as you move down. So what you do is you go into the enemy jungle and you wind up in their tribe bush in the bottom lane. And then you use that, which again is hopefully not warded, and you just sneak up on your enemy, and hopefully they don't escape. This is a good way because you're cutting them off from their turret a bit. So unless they have flash or exhaust up, you're gonna be doing damage as they're escaping. And with any amount of crowd control, this should turn into an easy gank. An easy successful gank, rather. And since the map is rotationally symmetrical, if you're on blue side, then you go into the enemy jungle and then you gank top lane through that tribush tactic. And the third and final way of getting off a gank is to gank through the lane. Now, this is much easier in bot and top lane than it is in mid lane, because in bottom and top lane, there are the bushes at the edge of the map. So if your lane is pushing, you can sneak into those bushes, hopefully out of minion vision of the enemy team, and then you can just hide there until the enemy either comes out a bit more, or you think you're ready to turret dive. Because they're not going to expect you to be in that bush a lot of the time, unless you do something obvious, like get spotted by minions, or if you have an aura that gives them a debuff. So, the thing about ganking is that you really have to communicate a lot with your lane mates in order to be successful. So normally, all this really requires is just a ping onto the enemy champion, and maybe a message in chat to say, be ready to kill in X amount of seconds.
Shut down.
We will not pity the defenseless.
So yeah, in general, when you're playing a jungler, you have a couple goals. You have pretty much the most objectives of any player on the team. You need to kill camps to stay even with your enemy jungler in levels. You need to get ganks off in order to stay even or get ahead of the enemy jungler. You can invade to get ahead, to strictly get ahead. You need to give buffs to your allies in order for them to sort of have an advantage over their enemies. And then you also have to look at the global gold objectives, specifically Dragon and Baron. So in this game we don't really get to do a Baron, but at Dragon, you are generally the one to make the call to start doing Dragon, because you're the one who has the smite, which means that you can secure the kill onto Dragon for your team and get that 190 global gold per person. And generally the same goes for Baron. You don't really want to do Baron without your jungler there, because that smite could mean the difference between you or the enemy team getting that Baron buff. So the dragon spawns at 2 minutes 30 seconds into the game and respawns every 6 minutes. And then Baron spawns 15 minutes into the game and respawns every 7 minutes. Now, it is important for you as a jungler to try and keep the timer as much as you can on those buffs. If you go into your game options and enable timestamps in the chat log, you will notice when exactly the moment, the second, when you kill, or even the enemy kills, Dragon or Baron buff if you have vision of the killing blow being landed. So if you look at those timestamps, just add 6 or 7 minutes, and then that's when you know the next spawn.
Weapons are for the weak.
An enemy has been slain. Your team has destroyed a
So once again, to summarize, farm camps,
Rage is beyond
give buffs, gank, farm some more, ward, and get the map objectives. So that'll be it for this video, and good luck in the Rift.